There are two things that all MSK therapists have in common the world over. They love free trials and exercise prescription. So if you're a chiro, physio, osteo, or some sort of os-chiesio hybrid, then head to rehabmypatient.com/physio matters now and get 3 months on us of the best exercise prescription software available.
Alex Murray, welcome to Chewing It Over. As a podiatrist, I assume you're talking about insoles or something. Is that what you've got planned for us at Therapy Live, mate?
That's it. It's actually a sneak attack. I'm launching an international orthotic lab. I'm here to just tell you how to make the best orthotic prescription you can possibly make, proprietary, obviously.
That cures all shoulder and jaw pain. That
jaw pain is a big untapped market. You've hit the nail on the head. Look, you've hit exactly on why I don't love the title podiatrist in a way. Like, I do love it, and I love-hate relationship. It's because it comes with a lot of baggage. It's just like, you're going to look at someone's gait, you're going to look at, what's wrong, and then give them an orthotic or a shoe or sell them something. And I did that for a while, and then you sort of realize it works for some people, works for others, and sometimes it's not enough. So what I'm going to be talking about, at Therapy Live, and what I sort of talk about in all my education that I give, is the podiatry side of things, and then the things that I've learned as a strength and conditioning coach, things I've learned as an MSK therapist doing rehab. People confuse me for the physio in the clinic I'm now working in, because it's just patients get what they need, and it just comes from someone who spent their entire life studying the foot, the ankle, and then maybe a bit of anterior knee pain here or there. So yeah, it's you're getting the full gambit, and just someone who just looks at the foot.
Yeah, gotcha. Now, I think that what's relevant to say to the listeners that may have heard of some of your work before, even we've chatted before, we first met, at least on air, of chatting about Course Health, of all things, which, for those that don't know, or those that have got hazy memories of it, was a project really studying and understanding the philosophy associated to the causation within not just MSK practice, but where physiotherapy sits within that, but also causation in healthcare and in medicine, etc. And we had a great chat about that, and we spoke a lot about context, specificity, and the sociological factors affecting people's behavior, both in terms of what can be causal, but also then what can cause recovery. And so I know that you're really literate on those high holistic values as well. With something like this at Therapy Live, just to give the audience your title, developing individualized treatment plans for plantar heel pain from runners to retail workers. So I know you enough to know that you would never be on the zooming in so close to the microscope of the plantar fascia. But I also know that, like anything, we need to know which lens to see things through. So how are you going about approaching building this Therapy Live talk with all of the things that I know you could muse on in only 30 minutes, 45 minutes?
Yeah, look, that is the thing. It's also how you fit it all in 30 minutes. So I'm going to say something odd as well. I'm going to zoom out by zooming in.
Okay.
Which I can explain. You think, how do you do that? And it sort of comes back. I was seeing Greg Lehman talk, and one of the things that he talked about how biomechanics research just proves biomechanics as a field. And the idea is that if you zoom in so close on one topic and you actually look at it, you actually look at the research, and the lens that they're using in the zoomed in research often disproves or has links and saying, actually, there is something else going on here. And I think that's really, really useful when you're looking at something like the plantar fascia, partially because most of our research is zoomed in. And we can look at it and then go with a lens of saying, well, hold on a second, we're looking at an individual, we're looking at people, from the retail worker to the runner, to very, very different, completely different context, completely different life. You've got some people that are often shift workers, some people who, are training a huge amount, and sometimes, are doing work also on their feet. Very, very different. And then we look at what research we currently have, it clearly starts to show, actually, there's something else going on here. Actually, there's context that we can understand how the research was done, and then it gives us some of the answers actually when we're zooming out and saying, okay, what's right for this individual? How much does this person need to do? What happens when things do become a lot more chronic? What could be some more holistic, in quotation marks, treatments? So it's the chat's going to be quite specific, but showing people and saying, well, these are the treatments that we have available. Where do they fit based on the research we have? Who would we be using on? Why would we be using that on them? What is it actually doing? And then if we're thinking about someone in their entire life, where that's going to fit in. Because and the biggest issue we have is just the research that we do have that people often look at are RCTs or systematic reviews of RCTs. And so we've got all this information, beautiful information out there in case studies, in case series, in observation studies, which gives us all these lovely bits of details on actually this could be really useful for this population, or if you do this treatment like this or combine these two treatments together, it could actually work more effectively, and we can glean some of the context. You do a systematic review of RCTs, it misses all of that. Doesn't pay attention. Everything's averaged. And there's a new paper just out after I actually put in this
really?
Patient to Therapy Live that was like, turns out we have no research that actually looks at certain contexts like runners and elite athletes with heel pain. It's all just, we actually have, most of our studies don't have strict inclusion criterias to limit it to a certain population. So, you know, we already knew that from anyone who's looked at the research.
But it's been quite definitive to say that. Yeah, I think what I think is really interesting to try and understand, and why I'm looking forward to your session at Therapy Live, is this couple of ways in which you can get to the word individualize, which is in your title. One is that you would, I don't mean you personally, but as a therapist, we could individualize by way of just further and further stratifying by category. Almost that then a diagnostic category that then becomes a subcategory that then maybe the circumstances or the profile of that person, from a retail worker to it. So both got plantar heel pain that on the surface, if they had to write a few sentences about it, sounds similar. And then you substratify by main hobby or occupation or whatever, right? And it's just further and further stratification until you get to an N of 1, which is certainly one way of getting there. But then what I know that you're into, and certainly we're kindred spirits on this, is instead that you don't need to go down that route. You then simply try and understand the full mosaic of factors that would be that person as an individual, knowing already that they're an N of 1 as an individual, and you're individualizing it based on that in both your I'd say profession, or your experience across the professions, etc. Do you feel that of those two ways, when people sort of talk about individualization, do you feel that the one is more pervasive than the other? And am I right in assuming that you'd be the latter rather than the former?
Absolutely the latter rather than the former. And yeah, I do think, I mean, I guess the thing is, I mostly talk to, my biggest connection is podiatrists. And so there might be a bit of a skew there, but I definitely see this sort of subgrouping to be a much more prevalent thing, because to be honest, we're not at that point of truly individualized care, and subgrouping is just more of a way of not individualizing as the word suggests, but just trying to make a decision. It's a decision-making process more than it is. That's what I've seen, where it's like, okay, someone comes in, what does the study say is going to be better? You know, we look at the RCT and it says, or the systematic review that was recently done, it says, okay, stretching is better than shockwave. And so you sort of just have this sort of cascade of, okay, you're just trying to make a decision. So individualized care is really primarily a decision that is made between you and the patient. And that's where I think, you know, if we're going to talk about what individualized care is, it's a shared decision-making process. It's taking into account patient values. It's doing all the other things that subgrouping can't do. Because, you know, if you've got someone who's, you know, a retail worker, let's just say, let's take the whole idea of that title is it's dichotomizing purposely for the purpose of education, but not in reality. They'll have vastly different values and ideas and activities. Someone could be 20, 25. Another retail worker could be 60. One could have, just wants to go on a holiday. The other one wants to play with grandkids. There's a vastly different set of context, but also then a vast set of life experiences. Because I've definitely had people come in and they've gone, I would like shockwave. This makes the most sense. And I kind of sit there, and if you read the paper, well, stretching's works just as effective, right? But the studies aren't individualized. They aren't looking at the what is the consistent factor, not just we had stretching group, we had a non-stretching group or a shockwave group, and then who got consistently the better outcomes. And there's also a lot of biases in there as well about financial bias. We can't read a study. Patellofemoral pain studies are classics for this, when we see similar results between orthotics and exercises. And so they go, well, exercises cost less, so why wouldn't you do that? And then you actually dig into the study and you see there's actually unfortunately subgroups, but that's how the research works. But they're saying that actually people who have less pain, who have lower levels of pain, have higher levels of function, would do better with an orthotic. But people who have higher levels of pain, lower levels of function, probably going to do better with exercises. And you can start to glean an idea of, well, hold on a second, are those people who have anterior knee pain, lower function, higher pain, what's going on there? Are they people who are just pushing into pain? Are they people with actually something more going a lot wrong that needs re-education? Are they becoming fear avoidant? There's a whole bunch of these other things that could be happening that exercises are going to be much better for. And the low pain people, you just go, great, here's an insole, go running. They do better.
And absolutely. And then also the same trials will fail to differentiate sometimes or tease out the relevant difference between, say, a 15-year-old pubescent male and a 60-odd-year-old female retail worker with very different needs, expectations, but then they get aggregated in that data. And so it takes for us to be thoughtful about how we tease those things out and integrate it into our wider reasoning, of which, that's why one of the reasons why I was just so over the moon to see that you and others had gone out to our advert for introducing stage guests. It's just exactly what we were hoping for, and the professional diversity on show is brilliant. But also because in the spirit of Therapy Live, it's quality MSK therapy, regardless of what flavor of certificates on your wall. And as you're describing and discussing there, we've all got to have the same goal, really, as to helping that patient with whatever it is that they're coming to see us with. And that seems to be pretty independent. You've got some really interesting thoughts on those sorts of variables. I really definitely want to give you the floor to sort of give me a few of your where you're at with your thinking in that direction with regards to that multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary aspects. Like, give me, I know that's a big topic and a talking in of itself for another day, but just out of interest, what have you been finding in that direction?
So I'm very much in favor of transdisciplinary care, and that's different to multidisciplinary care. And my understanding of this, I have to say, is shout out to my friend Sophie Shepherd. She's currently doing her PhD looking into curriculum, designing a cross profession curriculum for pain care. And a lot of it works on this transdisciplinary care, that no matter what profession that you come to with, there is a set of skills and a set of knowledge that's going to be useful and needed across all the professions. And therefore there is a job. I mean, we see this with work cover, right? Or insurance-based claims, where you have individuals and they put a job out saying, oh, we need someone who's going to be a caseworker, and they can be an EP, they can be an osteo. You guys probably I don't think you have EPs, exercise physiologists. They can be an osteo. They can be, you can be a physiotherapist. You can be lots of different things, because they're saying there is a core skill set there that you have. And when we deal with musculoskeletal medicine, I mean, it's the same. You've got the ability to assess. That's a skill that goes across professions. You've got the ability to give exercises. You've got the ability to talk to people about their diagnosis and provide them advice about the movement in general, their activities that they're doing. So they're really, when we talk about multidisciplinary, the idea is that we are all individuals operating in our own pods and working together in a team. The art, if you think about a movie, you've got like the art department, the people who are making costumes, and you've got the people who are making the sets. And despite the fact that they're doing a very similar job, they're vastly separate. And they talk to each other. So one doesn't make a costume that just looks out of place in the set, but they're doing different jobs. Whereas what we really need people who are good at both, who are able to, or have a skill set they share. So then there is much more cross understanding, and working better as a team. But then when we step back out, we've still got those really specialized skill sets. I don't expect physios, osteos, EPs to be making orthotics. I don't expect them to be understanding footwear. I don't expect them to keep up with it in the same way that, I'm going to lean on those people a whole lot more when it comes to really minute details of manual therapy, of exercise prescription, of maybe some return to sport in specific circumstances, because that's their primary skill set, that's their primary focus. Yeah. But in the middle, if someone comes to see me, if they come to see someone else, they should be getting a really similar set of care from that one individual. And then they might then send to me for some specialized aspect. But because then I've got those same skills, I can completely understand exactly what they're doing, how they're doing it. And from my specialized skill set perspective, I might then have the ability to actually say, well, my view on this common set of skills that we have is actually slightly different in this situation because I have this specialized knowledge. And so just got this lovely overlap. If you think for the Venn diagram, multidisciplinary being the more separate, and then sort of having a pipeline in and connections, transdisciplinary is the whole idea is that we have this lovely overlap. And specifically when we think about things like complex pain presentations, persistent pain presentations, this is a big sort of advert for Sophie's work. But we need more of those core skills when we're dealing with those patients, and who delivers them, whether they be a psych, a physio, a podiatrist. There is some set of core skills we should have. And it works the same for MSK. The thing is in MSK, we often already have that. We're just not recognizing that. And professions like podiatry are not, unfortunately, in my personal opinion, and I emphasize that, are not taught widely enough. So they leave with a specialized skill set, and that is creating more of that multidisciplinary rather than a transdisciplinary care. And so that's where I sit. And so, I can sit here and, I'm aware of things like low back pain research. I'm aware of things like frozen shoulder base research, rotator cuff research, because it's also in having that skill set that's just outside of a very specialized area. I'm looking into these other areas and going, hey, look at the research over here, and look what the studies they're doing over here, and look at these case studies, and look at this. We don't have research in the foot on fear avoidance really that much, or we have a very small bit. We don't have it on pain catastrophizing. We don't have anything like that. And so we wonder why, if you sit in your shell, we operate with these sort of very specialized skill sets and kind of very separate, maybe very reductionist looking just at biomechanics, is because that's the research that's done, because we're not looking further out.
People get taken by surprise a little bit as well sometimes, and where if you hadn't seen the way in which low back pain research, hip research, shoulder research had gone with regards to the failure to correlate tissue pathology with symptom, particularly symptom intensity, symptom binary on, off, painful or not, it has some closer links in peripheral joints than it does, say, centrally in spines. But the amount of people, podiatrists included, but not exclusively, that were so blindsided when there were certain signs of that, both in the structural pathology and in the biomechanical factors, that meant that those correlations didn't hold nearly as well, never mind causal inference. It is something that having that attention more broadly and holistically is going to mean that you're less surprised and shocked. Can sometimes still be just as frustrating in some ways, but it's still there, and that's why it's great for you to be seeing each individual in its fullest, in order to be able to individualize those programs. Excited to hear and see more about Sophie's work. I think that sounds obviously right up my street, but also we need that common language. We can sometimes make, like, people are persuaded to move in that direction, but particularly those that have been sort of legacy educated. So it's that then they're having to retrofit through CPD and own personal interest, rather than it being, say, undergraduates coming through that we can learn the lessons and create a better melting pot across MSK. There is a slightly different aspect culturally to that than those of us that are in the game that then have been working a certain way that need to transition over. We need to make sure we've got that common thread of an appropriate language and having enough in common, so that then we can start to realize that is the more appropriate way to truly help people with their functional deficits that we want to try and correct for want of a better term, or help them with or coach them for. So we're definitely excited to hear more in that direction.
I think I'd pick up on your point about, being blindsided by all this sort of new research and things. And the thing that I see, and partially because I fell for this myself, because it sort of sounds like it was a trick there. But when we had this new research come along, I mean, I did explain pain. I was there with David Butler, and I also had no idea. I tell this story. I had no idea who David Butler was, and I just spent this entire session just hogging his time, being like, what is going on, man? Like, this is you're blowing up my whole worldview. Everything's, and all these people like lining up ready to talk to him, and he's just talking to me because he's just like, podiatrists don't turn up to these things. So he was just like trying to what I realized was trying to just like crack our profession in a way, being like, we've got to convert more. But there's a replacement effect and because it's like, oh, well, now that we re-understand pain, we need to see the individual. All of this old research goes out the window. We're not looking at biomechanics anymore. We're not looking at posture anymore. We're just looking at how we do this pain stuff. And what we're missing is how it all joins together. It's the biopsychosocial model or the enactive model. It's how everything works together. And so that's sort of, a big part of why I chose this topic. It's a big part of how I'm going to speak to things. It's the big reason why I want to zoom in to zoom out, is because by looking at that research and saying, well, here's the what's going on in research that we have from a tissue level, from, and this is where observational studies are so good, because or these lower powered studies, as they're called, are so good because they're less controlled, they're less specific, they're less averaged in many different ways. They've got smaller sample sizes. And when you plug that into your understanding with bigger studies, and then you plug that into you look at it from a much more enactive, that biopsychosocial sort of approach, there's lots of amazing tidbits that we can pull out that tell us how it all fits together. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's just about looking at it from a different lens, and then just not looking at RCTs, because the RCTs, in a way, while they are much more powered for identifying causation, they also just muddle things completely. And a big part of our discussion, a big part of Cause Health, why I came on as one of their communication and education partners, which I was shocked that when they first had they first like, would you like to join? I'm like, I'm nowhere near smart enough for it. But it's just about really being able to understand and push out the message of, there's much more forms of evidence that we could use. These lower power studies, it's not about poo-pooing RCTs. It's about going, well, actually, these are two different types of science, or two different levels of science that come with pros, that come with cons. Same with RCTs, there's pros and the cons. How does this all fit together? And then when you have an individual turn up, how does that individual fit within that research? And then what knowledge can you gain from them as a N=1 experiment of your own? And you sort of start to combine everything together, and it starts to make a heap more sense than just, again, replacing this knowledge with, oh, now pain's the next thing. David Butler's
that's a massive vulnerability, though, and I think we're all guilty of it. But I can't help but ask, because I've always sort of pondered and wondered, and I know that there'll be varied opinions on it, but particularly there's almost a vulnerability in podiatry when you think about the sort of the physics, the biomechanics, the nature of almost and there's even an element of engineering that goes on within your profession relative to, say, physiotherapy, my own. What do you think that background and the relevance of those factors still, not as if they've been moved on from, that people then can't help but think, okay, I'm gonna be less bothered about forces for a bit, but I'm going to then be just all about the wiring. It just becomes neurocentric, or it's like I've had worked with some fantastic podiatrists, and to some extent with some patients, it's great to see them move in this direction. But then sometimes they kind of stop short of actually getting to anything vaguely holistic, where they sort of say, actually, yes, your body is like a car, but instead of me telling you that you've worn down your brake discs, it's actually that your wiring's glitchy, and they've just sort of swapped out an analogy which I'm not saying that inherent to that analogy, especially when a patient brings that forward, it can sometimes be a really useful way of moving them to something that's a bit bigger than said brake pads are being worn out. But I just mean that then, is there something more inherent or a disposition of what might be motivating podiatrists to even become podiatrists that could mean that your profession itself has a bit of a vulnerability in that direction, even more so than other professions?
Yeah, I guess I'd be careful talking about from a UK perspective, because I haven't worked in the UK. Okay. But I would hazard a guess, because we see it here in Australia, is that a huge amount of people are working in private practice, or a huge amount of people working in departments in a way that promote this. That promote this view. We see this with, I saw a study on using psychosocial questionnaires in clinical practice at the Pain Society conference here just a couple of months ago. And it literally just said, they said, it's tricky to implement this because senior clinicians don't see this as useful.
Right.
And so we've got systems and senior people, and we don't have, I feel like, as much of a system that's going, actually, realistically, we need greater skill sets. We need to go back and relearn new tools. At the end of the day, that's what we have, is we have these tools that we have. We have footwear, we have orthotics, and then the other thing that we have is the easier tools to pick up are a shockwave or a laser. And so we've got this potent mix of a reductionist, sort of approach, where it's all about the tissues and getting healing. We've got a huge amount of experience of people getting better. And the other thing that we have is that if you give someone an orthotic and it doesn't work, there's a good chance they're probably just not going to come back. And so from an experience perspective, I see a lot of people not tracking those people that aren't coming back and thinking and reflecting. So there's that experience component. We don't have, like I said, a lot of these extra sort of tools. We don't have exercise taught to us, really. We don't have a lot of experience with that. And so it's harder to see the benefits of that, but also two, then it's a big skill set to go and learn. I went back and I did my postgrad at the University of Otago, and that's where I learned some exercise prescription. And even then, I didn't feel confident enough. I went out, became a strength and conditioning coach, and worked in a team for 2 years, just prescribing exercises. So it is a lot of work. And so you start to layer this all together, the biases that come with experience, the biases that come with that reduction as a viewpoint, the experience of seeing it work for quite a number of people. And you're also just missing the fact that when you give someone orthotic, are they going back to the gym? Are they going and doing some exercise? Are they doing these things incidentally that you're attributing to just being your wonderful orthotic? And people come back and tell you you've made wonderful orthotics. And you combine that with a private business sort of focus, which is, especially in Australia, which is the more that you sell an orthotic, the more that you sell shoes, the more people come back to get them recovered. That's a huge business aspect. The pressure of senior clinicians for that's the treatment focus, and the fact that we are in a way completely disconnected as a healthcare system from each other, meaning that we're not working in teams. I think, I chat to GPs here, and a lot of them are annoyed that we make decisions that we aren't always trained for as podiatrists. I am trained to, with my postgrad to do a lot more, and they're annoyed that we're doing it. But part of it's, and they're going, you don't have the training. And part of it's like, well, we need to work in teams. One of the things that I see the NHS is you have like pain teams and specific teams for different types of people to go to, where they have a number of different professions and they all learn off each other. We don't have that exposure as well. So we're just having no chances for really, in a way, for us to break out as a profession in that way.
That overreach is more, you're more vulnerable to overreach and pushing outside of, say, competence, or what is perceived as such by others, if you're not in good communication or having those cross links, or again, that shared language that you might have. And so absolutely, it's only through us making sure that we continue to push those overlaps and thwart those distinctions that some want to make, blur those lines rather than sharpen them, that we'll get there, which again is exactly why I'm so delighted to see you on the roster. So I'm remembering now in this conversation as to why I was so excited to chat to you again today, and we'll catch up again soon, please. But yeah, Therapy Live. Come and listen to Alex's talk. I don't have the specific details in case the time has been given just yet. But basically, you're at 9 a.m. Oh, right, brilliant.
Well, because it's 6, it's going to be late here, and I told Jack, I said, you got to put me early.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so you'll be there with a beer in hand perhaps, and everyone will be thinking, "Blimey, he's on it for breakfast." So that would be for the UK. But yeah, I think obviously we've got worldwide speaker base and hopefully a worldwide delegate base as well, I'm sure. Thank you again so much for contributing. I'm really excited to see it. I'll be tuning in. For those of you that, and especially as someone who does enjoy Alex's work beyond this, and so his Therapy Live talk is going to be a belter. For those of you that have got a bit complacent with just think, if a patient says to you, like, why has this happened to me then? And you just give some sort of lazy answer to, so, well, it's a failure of shock absorption, or it's just overload, or whatever it might be, or you might be in that biomechanical space where you've got some sort of narrow answer. If you're being sort of really unicausal about something, then Alex is your guy to sort of broaden your horizons, but without completely losing you as to where some of the things I've just said might be factors in some cases. And how do you tease that out? How do you integrate it into your clinical reasoning? This is your guy, absolute superstar in the game. And so perfect speaker for Therapy Live. Thanks again, mate. Really appreciate it. Where can people find more about you ahead of Therapy Live on socials, etc.?
Yeah. On social media, The Rehab Podiatrist. It's Facebook, it's Twitter, it's Instagram, it's TikTok, unfortunately, as well. It's just
I wondered if you'd brave TikTok. Yeah, I've been hiding from it. I know the team have sort of been dabbling and stuff, but I've been hiding. So yeah, I'll have to try and find your stuff. Maybe you'll inspire me onto there.
But yeah, no, follow me on all the socials. I've also got a podcast I do regularly on individualized care, real clinicians, real chats with myself and lovely physiotherapist and Hakomi psychotherapist Kit Wisdom. And I also am podiatry systems as well for my actual official education.
Superb. No, thank you so much again. And yeah, let's keep in touch. Looking forward to Therapy Live. Hopefully see you there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. Thanks for having me.
Take care, mate. All the best.
You too.
Here at Physio Matters, we think physio matters. Access the library today and get access to the biggest lot of MSK content on the planet. Watch at home, work, or up a mountain to ensure your knowledge is at its peak. Physio-matters.com. More content than you can balance a treatment couch on.